So in this book, in one of the things I noticed was, and it wasn't the first time you've done this, but you've taken this image of broken signposts. So through the years, you've said signposts. Signposts of new creation is something I've heard you say a lot of times. Talk to us about the broken nuance. I think it's significant and it's helpful,
Yeah.
but what is that all about?
Okay. What it's all about is the common perception. And when I say common, I mean across humankind, across cultures, and across history, that let's take the first one, justice. We all know justice matters. Children know it's important to be fair, and they sense unfairness and so on. And they say that's not fair, not because they've taken a course in moral philosophy, because just they know it in their bones, what fairness and unfairness might look like. However, children too know that if they really want that piece of cake, but if there are four other people in the room, nevertheless, if they want it that much, they're prepared to say, oh, well, I'm more hungry than you, even if
Yeah.
the others say that's not fair. In other words, justice matters, but we're all prepared to bend it in our own interests. And
Mm.
of course, chase that one up to global international relations. We all believe in global justice, and yet we still have Cold Wars, and we have trade wars, and we have, you know, hacking of computers between national systems and so on. We're all trying to gain an advantage. And then
Yeah.
if something goes wrong for us, we'll all run to the UN or to some court of human rights and say, oh, so-and-so is being unfair. And the answer is actually, we're probably all being unfair, and we need to figure that out. So we all know justice matters. It appears to be a signpost pointing to the truth about what it means to be human, but it's always broken. Ditto with love. My would we be without love? If somebody can exist without love, we normally say that this person is very severely maladjusted. You know, the love of parents, of family, of
Yeah.
friends, etc., is what makes us who we are. And yet, even though we know that, we mess up our relationships this way or that for whatever reason. And half the great, probably more than half the great novels and plays and poems in the world are about the ways in which relationships are both beautiful and broken.
Hmm.
And the best ones still end in death. And then the same argument runs with spirituality, that most human beings, at least, unless they're very determined secularists, shall we say, know that there are other dimensions to life beyond the merely material. But many people, most people perhaps, find that those other dimensions sometimes go dark, and sometimes they can be apparently malevolent. We can get into some very bad and damaging stuff if we go down the wrong lines there. Ditto with beauty, and then particularly with freedom and truth. That we all know freedom matters, but so many human freedoms are bought, purchased at the cost of somebody else's slavery, and so on and so forth. And the history of the Enlightenment has been all about that. With truth, we all know that truth matters, and yet we all know that there is such a thing as fake news, and that it's much harder to tell the difference between fake news and truth than we used to think.
Yeah.
And that many people tell big lies and make a lot of people believe them and make a lot of people live in accordance with them. And then it actually becomes true. And so, what on earth does truth mean? And then
Hmm.
power, the last one. You can't get anywhere in the world without power. If we say nobody should have any power, then what will happen will be that the bullies and the bad guys will come in and say, oh, good, everyone else has gone away. We'll clean this place up. So we need power, we need authority, we need people to be rulers, leaders, guides, cops, etc. But we all know that that too gets messed up, and that power, as Lord Acton said, tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the history of politics
Yeah.
is the history of that. And sadly, the history of families is the history of that.
Hmm.
You know, you get a father who says, I've read my Bible and fathers are in charge here, so you get out of the way and you do this and you do what I tell you. And the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
Or it's a deeply, deeply dysfunctional and dehumanizing setup. So these things, in other words, we all know that these are signposts to what a genuinely human life might be. And if, insofar as there is a belief in God, maybe this is something to do with how God made the world. But then we discover that these have all collapsed. And then we could just sit back like Jean Paul Sartre and say, well, life is just a sick joke. It looks as though it's doing stuff, but actually it's meaningless, it's hopeless, and
Hmm.
all you can do is just get on and have another drink or make the best of life as you can, because it doesn't actually mean anything. And that's at that point, and this was what
Yeah.
excited me about chapter 7 of the Gifford Lectures. And I remember where I was standing at the point where this dawned on me, that the point where all the signposts are broken is the point where Jesus is going to the cross. The
Ooh.
story of Jesus going to the cross is a story of justice being denied, of freedom being trampled on, of power being abused, of love going cold with people denying and betraying him, etc.
Hmm.
And then you realize that's one of the reasons why the story of the cross is so compelling, because we all know in our bones that these broken signposts are broken. But instead of saying, oh dear, that means we can't point up to God anymore, we discover in the story of Jesus that God has come down to the place where the signposts are broken to meet us right there. And that, I think, is both the meaning and the power of
Wow.
the good news of Jesus.
Oh, man, man. That sounds like a really you just preached it. I mean, that's good. That's
Well,
good. I'm
well,
feeling all kinds of good things right now.
I mean, it is that sequence of thought. It's one of those things. As I say, I know exactly where I was when I first. I've been wrestling with all this for ages, and there it is. Get home and write it up quick. And so the Gifford Lectures, History and Eschatology, that's really one of the climax moments of that book. But then this book is a more popular level book where I decided, well, John's Gospel tells the story of Jesus in terms of kingdom and truth and power and freedom and all
Hmm.
these things which they
Hmm.
come out so strongly. So let's run the story with John's Gospel as the counterpoint and watch what
Yeah.
happens.